While they're finishing up, I'll do a brief intro here. Our last demo chef, but certainly not our least, is Lorenzo Boni, Executive Chef for Barilla America. And if you're going to be an expert with pasta, it certainly helps to grow up in Italy, as Chef Lorenzo did. He's had an impressive career in the restaurant world, constantly going back and forth across the pond between the U.S. and Italy, and then has joined Barilla. And so today we're going to find out how certain ingredients pair well with pasta and taste this delicious dish that we're making. Are we good? All right.
1 minute, please. Let me just figure out all the ingredients. And I'll be ready. Okay. Here we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Lorenzo Boni. I'm Executive Chef of Barilla America. And so I do quite a bit of traveling for Barilla. I'm always around the country giving presentation both for the retail and the food service side of our business. And when I'm traveling outside of Chicago, I like to say that I'm from Chicago, but people never believe me for some reason. But here we are in Rosemont, so I'm not going to lie to you. I'm Italian. And, well, I work for Barilla. I run the test kitchen here in Chicago. And we do a lot of recipe testing in the kitchen. And part of the recipe, it's always including all our team, and we get feedback all the time. And we've been working really, really hard in the past trying to develop recipes that work really, really well with whole grain. And I feel like we have a pretty good experience of that. So today I'm trying to just share a little bit of my experience with you, if I can. So let's go ahead with the presentation. So this is what we're going to cover, tasting of whole grain pasta, what you should do, what you shouldn't do with whole grain, and then a recipe demonstration, and at the end, a question if you like. My point is, when I work with chefs, oftentimes I feel like whole grain is used as a substitute for a non-whole grain product. So it's given as an option, just instead of regular pasta, using the same exact ingredients that they use on their regular pasta. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it doesn't work. It doesn't work just because whole grain is a different taste profile. And so if you offer say a fettuccine whole grain linguine with an Alfredo sauce, it's going to be not very successful. You have to design specific flavors and specific sauces to be successful with whole grain. So that's what we're going to try to kind of explain what we believe it works really well and what doesn't on whole grain. So basically, on the palate, whole grain has a more wheaty and bready and nutty flavor, a bit of sweet, a bit of bitter, and has definitely a stronger flavor to it, definitely a stronger flavor than traditional pasta. Yeah, and we're going to send samples out for you to try on both plain and on a little bit of marinara sauce so that you have an idea. But anyway, so basically what you typically don't want to pair to all grain pasta is purely tomato pasta sauce, is very acidic sauce. A marinara sauce that is tend to be more on the acidic side usually doesn't work really well. Delicate, very, very weak flavors like something like very plain, like for instance, I don't know, a very delicate vegetable. If you want to be more successful, if you want to basically stand up to the flavor of whole grain pasta, you want to go for more assertive flavors, more ingredients that are full of flavor and color and texture. That's what really does make a difference. So you want to look for the savory, umami flavor and sweeter sauces and texture, really important, because one of the things that happens when you bite on whole grain pasta, you're going to find a certain level of graininess to it. It's just natural. It's the fiber inside the pasta. So what I've learned over testing recipes is that if you pair your pasta, whole grain pasta, to a sauce that has more chunks, or more has a little more texture to it, you're going to basically hide that graininess of the pasta. So to give you an example, Alfredo sauce, very smooth, you're going to feel a lot, really, that graininess. A chunky vegetable and sausage, for instance, sauce like we have over there in that picture, is going to work really well. It's going to hide the graininess of your pasta. Pairings that work. So, like I said, assertive vegetable, kale, cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli rabe, asparagus, Brussels sprouts. Those are vegetables that work a lot better than, say, yellow squash or zucchinis or, if it comes to, seafood, sole, for instance. I want to stay with a seafood that is a little more tasty than a sole, or even although sole is a great fish. Mushrooms, all type of mushrooms, work really well. Aged cow milks, chilies, a little bit of spiciness work really well as well. And winter squash, carrots, and root vegetables. Those are flavors that really pair really well with whole grain. The pesto sauces, you have to be careful because there isn't enough moisture in them to kind of help the graininess of the whole grain. So just the olive oil based and the nuts in the pesto tend to highlight the more grainy texture of whole grain if you don't have enough moisture to it. So I would add a little bit of cooking water if you're using pesto. Techniques that work. Techniques, so roasting, it's definitely a technique, or braising is the technique that works really well. So you want to basically, again, get that rich umami flavor to it. Smoking, smoked dishes work really well. Thicker sauces with a little darker color will work better. One other thing that we always talk about is do not overcook your pasta. That's true actually for all kinds of pastas, not only whole grain, but whole grain especially. You're going to taste more of the graininess. So pasta al dente is going to provide a better glycemic index for your body, but also a more stable glycemic index, but also it's going to taste a lot better when it comes to whole grain. So now we're going to do the recipe, and while you are tasting this, and later you're going to try the recipe that I'm actually cooking today. The samples that you are getting is, like I said, it's a plain whole grain, just so that you kind of get a sense of what whole grain tastes and the texture. So I'm going to start cooking my pasta right away. Just need to boil the water a little bit. A little bit of oil to start. And then we have some onion. So once again, it's great if you can, create a nice, flavorful sauce in your base. A sauce that is very weak in flavor is not going to stand up. The whole grain is nothing new to Italians. The whole grain has been around forever, especially up on the mountains in northern Italy. All kinds of whole grains products have always been consumed. Just because it was so hard to bring all the ingredients up on the mountains, not always you could farm everything. So people who live up on the mountains try to make the best out of it and use it all. And it seems like everything else in Italian cooking, especially, everything was really well locally. And so those vegetables and those ingredients coming from the forests in northern Italy always, for some reason, worked really, really well with the whole grain that was produced around there. And today I'm actually making a recipe that is actually typical of northern Italy, the region of Lombardia, where Milan is based. So a little bit of onion, olive oil, not much. And then I have some roasted tomatoes. The roasted tomatoes, is just one more extra flavor that you want to add to the sauce. You could use definitely regular tomatoes, but especially up on the mountains, like I was saying, where this sauce is specifically originally from, it was very, very popular to roast, making bread, and at the end of the bread making in the the bread oven, basically in hard wood burning oven, they would do all the roasted vegetables. So a lot of vegetables got roasted, and like I said, it's not only the ingredients that you use, but very important is the technique that you use to put together your sauce. So we're going to do a little bit of roasted tomatoes. Meanwhile, I'm going to start cooking my pasta here. And when I cook my pasta, I usually do a good amount of water. Very important on all grain too, because you're going to, if your water is not boiling, strong enough during the cooking process, you're going to have a different gelatification of the starch, and it will affect the texture of your pasta. So you always want to have a good amount of water so that when you pour your pasta in, it gets back to boil fairly quickly. And then you basically cook your pasta in a good, hard boiling water environment. So now I add my roasted tomatoes, a little bit of salt and pepper. And then on the side here, I have this blender, which I'm going to use to make a little bit of sorrel oil. So sorrel is an herb that is fairly typical in Italy. Northern Italy is very common. Found also like just wild up on the mountains. And we're going to do sorrel, a little bit of oil, salt and pepper, not much salt, a little bit. I rather use, very little salt everywhere rather than a lot in the sauce. I feel like you can use a lot less salt this way and have like a more even flavor profile. I noticed that a lot of people, when they cook pasta, they cook it in a totally plain water, no salt at all. And then they oversalt the sauce. And to me, that's not the best way to get the best out of your pasta. Anyway, let's see this. this is not hooked up, so I'm gonna have to find a plug. Is there a plug down there?
Yes, here it is.
Okay, thank you. So this is very simple. It's just sorrel, salt and pepper, a little bit of oil. I'm going to use more oil than what I actually need, just because the blender is big and, you know. It's going to take more oil than I actually need for this dish, obviously. There we go. Okay. So now my sauce keeps cooking. I'm going to add a little bit of cooking water. That's something I always do. The starch that the pasta releases in the sauce will help combine everything together much better. My pasta is still a bit undercooked, so we're going to still wait a little bit. Now it's time to get this out of here. Here you go. There you go. Meanwhile, if you have any question, I'm very happy to answer. Feel free to ask questions while I'm cooking my pasta, no problem.
You add salt to the water before you add the pasta? Someone said to me, no, all the chefs do it the other way. Which is it?
Well, the reality is that if you put some water to boil with salt in it, it's going to take a little bit longer time to get to boil. So usually chefs add it like at the very last minute, just so that basically you don't waste too much time in boiling water. But really the difference is minimal. We're talking seconds. So it doesn't really make a difference. The only thing that I'm concerned of is, especially in a professional environment, if you salt your water ahead of time and then you forget about it for a little bit and then the water reduces, obviously you're going to have a lot more salt in the water. So that's a concern. But really, there isn't really a big difference anyway. Thanks for the question. So I'm boiling my pasta. Like I said, braised, roasted flavors work really, really well. If let's put it this way: let's break down this recipe, and we use a totally different technique. So we're using fresh tomatoes cubed, and then we have onions that it's been maybe cooked on the side or steamed, let's say. And then you have sorrel salad that you cut julienne and you add to your pasta last minute like you would do with basil. You're going to taste your whole grain much stronger. But by basically sauteing the onion, creating that sort of caramelization in the recipe, and then adding roasted vegetables, roasted tomatoes to it, and having it simmering down and getting more flavorful, it will definitely help a lot to basically stand up to your stronger flavor of your whole grain. So I'm gonna... I couldn't hear, sorry. Well, we already talked about that a little bit. Yes, yeah. So he was saying to talk about the tradition of whole grain in northern Italy. I already mentioned that up on the mountains, it's really common, not only pasta, but also bread and so on. And the people, since many years before the government made it mandatory, used to eat whole grain and really enjoy it, But again, it's just how you serve your whole grain, how you you present your whole grain that makes it successful. Like I said, sometimes it's frustrating that, people, when they choose whole grain, is only for it's almost like sometimes a sacrifice to them. Okay, I'm eating whole grain, but then at least I can eat something more indulgent on the other side. It shouldn't be like that. Whole grain, if well presented, I think is very, satisfactory and very, very tasteful. It's just a matter of how you present it, basically, I think. Okay, so my pasta is a little bit under. I'm going to drain it and toss it with the sauce. This is something I always recommend, just because, you want to flavor the two things together. Once again, whole grain on a plate, steamed with sauce on the top. You're going to eat the whole grain around and you're going to be like, I don't love it. But if you if you cook it all together and flavor the whole things together and marry the flavors together, then it's going to be the same ingredients, same sauce and everything, but it's going to be such a better, different experience that you're going to love it. All right, so let's see if I have a little spoon here. I can use this. So what I typically do with all my recipes, I like to keep my extra virgin olive oil as preserve the integrity of the olive oil as much as I can. So for any recipe that calls, say, for 4 tablespoons of olive oil, I use a tiny bit to start my recipe. And then when I turn off the heat and I'm ready to finish up, I'll add the rest. So because I want to get, first of all, the good flavor, but also the benefit of a raw extra virgin olive oil. You don't want to overcook it. And then we toss a little bit, like this. So this is my plate. And like I said, you're going to try this recipe later in your breakout session, I guess. So then we'll do a little bit of tomatoes, roasted tomato whole grain pasta dish. And then we top it with blue cheese, which is Gorgonzola cheese. It's a typical cheese from the region of Lombardia. And again, it brings crumbles, brings a little bit of texture to the sauce. And then we'll do a little bit of sorrel pesto around, like this, to make it pretty, and a little bit over the top. And this is it. I don't know if you can see this. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, once again, if you have questions of any kind, I'll be glad to answer.
No, but I think you're better.
Chef, is there a considerable difference in cooking times between whole grain against traditional semolina?
No, really. No, the cook time is about the same. I honestly, I never really looked at the different cuts side by side. The cooking time is more affected by the thickness of the pasta rather than the type of pasta. There isn't a big difference. When you guys, if you cook pasta ahead of time, with whole grain, I would be a little extra careful than traditional pasta, just because basically the fiber within the structure of the pasta tends to break the structure a little bit more. So if you overcook it, it's going to be a little bit softer than traditional pasta. Usually what I follow is 50% of the recommended cook time. I drain it and cool it down, make it nice and cold, and then pack it in the fridge. And then I reheat it later on, and it will be just the perfect texture. Now, with the traditional pasta, it's a little more forgiving with all grain. Like I said earlier before, also for the taste perspective, it's really important to serve it nice and al dente. And so.
Do you have suggestions then in the food service environment where you're holding things on steam tables, whatever? Should you feature this on a sort of a made-to-order station, therefore, or what is the best way to really get the most out of whole grain pasta in a food service situation?
It really, I mean, it depends what kind of situation you're in. Whole grain is a pasta that holds up really well. Our whole grain, I can say, it holds up really well. So even in a environment where you have like a steam table and you stock your pasta for a little while, it works really well. Obviously, ideally for like not only whole grain but all kinds of pastas, serving it as quick as you can is the best. So usually what I do, even at, we sponsor really big events. Just this past weekend we were at Chicago Gourmet at Millennium Park, and we cooked for about 8,000 pasta dishes a day over the weekend. And we served our pasta all really, really nice and al dente, but basically we had a number of these inductions. We had pre-cooked pasta and sauces ready to go, and then basically we had a chefing dish, basically toss the pasta kind of a la minute, put it on the chefing dish and serve it. We had a really, like a very heavy traffic of people visiting us, thankfully, and so the pasta would go fast. So it really depends on where you are, but really whole grain I feel like it's a good pasta to work even with mass feeding. Yes?
So I was just curious, did you cook all the pasta at Millennium Park?
Yes. So
you did. You didn't
yes.
do any pre-cooking before?
We pre-cooked in the morning and then reheated later during the day. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So we had almost like a food truck. We have with a nice pasta cooker and then a blast chiller next to it. So we basically cook, blast chill, fridge. Cook, blast chill, fridge. So in a couple of hours we are able to cook hundreds of pounds of pasta, cool it down and chill it. And it's super safe, and then we have really pasta that has been freshly cooked the same day, served. And then we have this pasta cooker on, and so during the day we do some pasta kind of la minute to kind of have, just fun parties with spaghetti or something like that. But for the most part, we pre-cook in the morning.
Darcy wanted to know for the next time she needs to cook for 7,000 friends.
I was curious, do you need to toss it with some oil to keep it from sticking together, or no?
When we pre-cook,
yes.
Yes. So when you drain your pasta, usually a tiny bit of oil, really very, very little to prevent from sticking, and then you cool it down. That's the right way to do. There is not really need for any oil in the water like some people do, just because I think just if you're using a poor quality pasta that releases a lot of starch, then there might be need of oil in the water, because the release of starch will make your pasta clump up at the bottom of your pan, and the oil will keep it a little bit more separated. But with higher quality pasta such as ours, really all you need is just a little bit of olive oil to prevent from sticking after cooking, not in the water.
As far as using whole grains to make your own pasta, durum, of course, is traditionally used. We like kamut. Do you have any other grains that you like for making your own pasta?
I didn't get exactly the question.
Do you make your own pasta ever? And what fresh pasta?
Fresh pasta?
Yes. What kind of whole grain flours do you like for that?
You know, I come from Bologna, the capital of fresh pasta, in Italy. And when I make my own fresh pasta, I usually use tender wheat and flour and eggs. That's how fresh pasta usually is made in northern Italy. And then some areas they use semolina flour, combination of water, but I tend to stick with my Bologna recipe. Not so
Take the
much
boy
oil.
out of Bologna, but you can't take the Bologna out of the boy. Is that how the saying goes, right? Yeah.
And then really one other thing that I like to mention, beside the whole grain, the benefit also comes from the sauce and the quantity of sauce that you use on your pasta. Super important. Because in the past, pasta had a bad reputation, which we are fighting every day against it. But really, it comes down, in my opinion, to portion control and to how you pair your pasta. If you look once again at the Italian population in the middle of the Mediterranean region, seems that it was working really well for us, eating pasta twice a day, 7 days a week. And but the key difference that I see from Italy to the United States is, again, portion control and what you pair to pasta. How much fats you add to pasta, how much sauce overall you add to pasta. Those are the two things that, in my mind, are the things that are most important.
Well, great. I think we're all set here, and thank you very much for that lovely demonstration. Some good inspiration.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a great round of demos, and I know you want to run right next door to enjoy this evening's reception. Afterwards, so we're finishing a little earlier tonight. We'll have a 2-hour reception like last night. If you have any room left, you certainly can go out to dinner. I just do have one mention. If you do stay in tonight to watch the presidential debate, I want you to know that this space will be a politics-free zone tomorrow. We will not have any discussion of anything except whole grains in this room. Thank you very much. So enjoy the reception, and we'll see you tomorrow for another great day. Just like today, breakfast is 7:30 to 8:30, and then we'll meet together 8:30 sharp. Thank you.
Hello. Good morning. So thank you, everyone, for being here again today, and welcome to our third and final day of the conference. Before we get started, I just have a few little housekeeping things. We'll wrap up around noon today, and we're going to have a grab-and-go lunch afterwards, so you can stick around, enjoy lunch, network. But if you have to run off and catch a plane, then definitely grab a sandwich before you need to leave. I'd like to remind you that we will have the PowerPoint presentations and the videos of the presentations online on the Whole Grains Council website in October. So keep an eye out for that. And then lastly, we're going to send you a brief survey tomorrow. So if everyone could please just take 5 minutes of their time and fill it out, that will help us in planning our next conference.